Hey everyone, Matt here from Docs Running, and today we're going to do a comparison review of the Brooks Glycerin GTS 21 and the Asics Kayano 30. The reason we're doing this for you is these are actually very similar shoes. On paper, we'll talk about some of the specs, some of the other attributes. They both sit in the same category, being premium, higher stability, daily training shoes. So for those of you trying to decide, hey, which one of these might work better, if you're even interested in these shoes, I'm hoping this video helps you make that decision and differentiate about what might work better for you in one shoe versus the other. So let's start with spec first. The Glycerin GTS 21 weighs in at 10.7 ounces for men's size 9, women's size 10.5. That is 303 grams. The Kayano 30 weighs in exactly the same. 10.7 ounces, men's size 9, women's size 10.5, coming in at 303 grams, exactly the same weight. Stack heights are fairly similar, 38 millimeters in the heel, 28 in the forefoot for a 10 millimeter drop over in the GTS 21. The Kayano 30 has a 40 millimeter heel, 30 millimeter forefoot for also a 10 millimeter drop. Already starting out with stuff that's very, very similar. The fits are also very, very similar. So both of them fit on the wider side. The difference is going to be how the toe box is shaped and the midfoot security. So both, like I said, really wide. If you want a shoe that has a little bit more room, both these work really well as walking shoes because they're easy and have a little bit more room in case your feet swell if you're standing or walking for longer periods. But the difference here is the toe box on the Asics shoe actually goes a little bit straighter. The Glycerin GTS, the Brooks shoe, does taper a little bit quick. That was something that I did notice that I didn't notice in the Kayano 30. So if that's something that doesn't bother you at all, you know, the Glycerin 21 is going to be, GTS 21 is going to be totally fine. But if you want that straighter toe box, the Kayano 30 is going to win out a little bit more. The other thing that's really different between these two outside of the, I mean, this thing is similar, is they're both on the wider side. The midfoot fits are very different in how they do security. So the Kayano 30 has a gusseted tongue that locks the foot in really well. I will say I have not had to tie the laces down. Foot is secure throughout the length of the shoe. The Glycerin GTS 21 is a little bit less secure. The tongue is not gusseted. The midfoot doesn't fit as secure. I've really had to tie down the laces to get a secure lockdown, which has been fine because both of them have good sized tongues that can handle that. But there's just a little bit more midfoot room and it takes a little bit more to lock down over here. So if you want a little bit more room in the midfoot, the GTS 21 might be better. But if you want a little bit better security, the Kayano 30 is probably going to work better for you. Outside of that, both have stiff heel counters, fairly well padded heels. So again, uppers similar, but those small differences right there. When it comes to the ride, things are also different. So how the stability is done is also really different, but we'll start with the ride first. So both these shoes have heel bevels. The only challenge with both of them, and I hope they're both listening, is they still have a lot of posterior flare where it's rounded, but the midsole kind of sits back a little bit, which still will cause a little bit of an early initial contact. They are better than previous versions because when you land, yes, it's rounded, but the sole is just going to contact a little bit earlier. So very similar feel on that. So if that doesn't bother you, it's going to be similar either way. Once you transition past that, both of them have very solid midfoots. The forefoot is where this gets different. The Glycerin GTS has more flexibility. The Kayano 30 does not. It's a more stiffer and rockered ride over on the Kayano 30. Feels more maximal. The GTS 21 has a little bit more forefoot flexibility. So if that's something you want or don't want, hopefully that helps you make a decision in that regard. The midsoles also feel fairly different. The Kayano 30 wins out in feeling like the softer and cushioned ride. And that's evident the second you put it on. It's like, okay, the Flight Foam Blast and Pure Gel do feel cushioned. They do feel soft. The nitrogen, the DNA Loft, which is nitrogen injector over the Glycerin GTS, doesn't feel that soft. It feels slightly firm, and the way the stability is done also firms it up. So if you want a softer ride, Kayano 30 is going to work. If you want a tiny bit of firmness, the Glycerin GTS is going to work a little bit better for you. How stability is done in these is also different. So Brooks, both of them are newer age. Brooks is using guide rails and on the medial and lateral sides, and I believe that there is a medial post in here, but that is not confirmed. The Kayano 30 does not have a medial post, using a lot of sidewalls and internal geometry. And what that ends up feeling like is, to be honest, the Glycerin GTS just feels like the heel and midfoot are fairly stiff, and then the forefoot's fairly neutral. So that's how they're doing that. They create stiffness. I don't really notice the guide rails in terms of stiffness or like high sidewalls, whereas the Kayano 30, I really notice it feels like there are good sidewalls along the entire length from heel to forefoot. So if you need forefoot stability, the Kayano 30 is going to work better. If you don't need it, the GTS is going to work a little bit better. But I feel the stability much more in terms of sidewalls along the length of my foot, guiding me forward, and the internal geometry. So if that's something you don't want as much, the Glycerin GTS 21 is going to be a little better. But if you don't want as much of that stiffness kind of feel, the Kayano 30 is going to be a little bit better. So both these shoes are very good shoes. They have upgraded a lot from prior versions. They're doing much better, bringing new age stuff. Just this is much softer. a little more secure. Stability is a little bit more apparent in this version. The Glycerin GTS is also wider than it used to be. Stability is more on the heel and midfoot and comes more through stiffness than anything else. And again, both good options, both the same weight. The last thing I will say, for whatever reason, the Glycerin GTS feels a little bit easier to run in. Even though the weight is the same, feels just a tiny bit lighter in foot, little easier transition. The Kayano 30 has been great. I have over 100 miles in my pair. I really enjoyed it. It just takes a little bit longer to break in and feels a little bit more versatile and feels a little bit better walking than running. But your unique body is going to vary. Both good shoes. Hopefully that video helps you decide which one might work better for you. We'll always have new stuff. We have videos and reviews out on both these shoes, and we'll have a written review out really soon on the Glycerin GTS. So stick around for that one and hope this all helps.